Everyone, I hope you're having an amazing day. So today we're going to talk about JavaScript. If you're a Salesforce developer, there might be a time in your development career where you might have to use the JavaScript, maybe for developing on AngularJS or React.js, or maybe you are someone who are doing Lightning component development, right? Irrespective of the reason being, right? It's good to know about the JavaScript development, because the reason why is that JavaScript is one of the core technologies of the World Wide Web, right? Because if you're using JavaScript, right, JavaScript enables interactive web pages, right, and is an essential part of web application. The vast majority of website uses it for client-side page behavior, right? And all the major web browsers have dedicated JavaScript engine to execute it. For instance, Chrome has its own, Firefox its own, Safari has its own, right? JavaScript is also abbreviated as JS, right? And it's a dynamic programming language. Some people call it as a scripting language. It conforms to ECMAScript specification, right? So because they release the standard pretty often, and JavaScript confines to it, right? JavaScript is often called it as high-level, just-in-time compile language, right? And it is prototype-based, object-oriented language. So we'll talk about that eventually, right? So what we're going to do, the reason why I wanted to talk about JavaScript is, right, it is very essential, right? Because if you are someone who is a full-stack developer, then you need to know JavaScript, because JavaScript can be used in front-end, it can be used in back-end. So if you're a full-stack developer, you will be dealing with the front-end as well as the back-end, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about the nitty-gritties of JavaScript, and we're going to talk about the different aspects of JavaScript, based on latest ECMA standard, right? Eventually in the later course of JavaScript. So not today though. So today what we're gonna do, we're gonna install two software. One is the Visual Studio Code. We will be writing code using Visual Studio Code. We won't be using Notepad++, right? That's old-fashioned. Visual Studio Code is pretty good, right? You can have intelligence, in other words, code completion. And it's pretty handy. And we need Node.js because JavaScript can be run on a browser and as well as a Node. We're not using a browser today. We're not going to use any HTML. We wanted to get into the nitty-gritty stuff of JavaScript. Only the JavaScript component we are interested into, right? Even if you're not a Salesforce developer, please stay in. You will get some benefit out of today's session. I tried to make it very simple, right, so that you get some value out of it. And if you're someone who's going to use a different framework like React or Angular or Vue.js, then this session you will find some value out of today's session, right? Cool. Okay, the first thing first, you need to go to code.visualstudio.com, right? And it will install you if you click on download.windows for Windows, right, you can install it for Windows. That being said, Visual Studio Code can be installed for Macintosh as well as for Linux, right? If you're someone who's using Mac, you can use Visual Studio Code as well, right? As well as if you are someone who's using Ubuntu, you can use Visual Studio Code for Ubuntu as well. I use Ubuntu on my other PC, right? So I've used Visual Studio Code there. So pretty handy. It works very well. Cool. Now, once that's installed, right, go to Node.js, right? If you do not know how to go to the website, just use any of your favorite browser. Type google.com and type Node.js. It will take you to this page, and go to download, and you got different options for download here, right? So if you're using 64-bit Windows, you go to 64. If you're using 32-bit, so you can stick to 32. If you're using Mac, you can follow the instruction here. It's pretty straightforward, right? If I hope everyone knows how to install the software, right? Because I won't be covering that today. At least I have an expectation that you guys know how to install the software. Cool. All right. So that's pretty much about the software. Then I wanted to talk about one more site today that says caniuse.com, right? So this is a very important site, right? So what happens, right? As I mentioned, right, JavaScript runs on browser, right? So you create a web page, right, which uses a lot of extensive JavaScript, right? And then what happens is that not every browser complies to the latest ECMA standard, right? Not every browser supports to the latest functionality of a JavaScript, right? For instance, let me give you a very simple example. Like, let's look at arrow function. Arrow function, right? So now arrow function is very handy function. Functionality in JavaScript, but the problem with this functionality or problem with the syntax or whatever you call, it's not supported by every browser. For instance, Opera Mini do not support at all. So if you are someone who developed a website, please make sure that a person who's going to use it can actually, use the functionality you intended to provide, right? For instance, you use arrow function in your web page, right, using a JavaScript. Someone using Opera Mini won't be able to take advantage of the functionality you've written using that arrow function, right? So Chrome pretty much is flexible. Google Chrome is one of the most it's very popular browser in the world, most commonly used browser. It has a big market share compared to rest of the browsers, right? Right. So that's one of the things I would like to you to pay attention, right? That before you develop any JavaScript functionality, please make sure that you refer to this website, because there might be a case the users from different part of the world may have old version of the browser. For instance, if you're using IE, right, Internet Explorer 11, right, this functionality won't be supported, right? So arrow functions won't be supported. So you need to keep into consideration, you need to pay special attention to that, right? That being said, enough of theory. Let's jump into the code side, right? So one request I would like you to make today, right? Please don't just watch my videos. Please go and practice at your own pace. It's very important that you guys practice, right? Without practicing, your memory won't retain much information after certain days. You will lose 15% information, then you lose 40%, then at the end of the day, you will completely forget about it. So it's no point, right? So it's good to get that muscle memory going, right? So once you log into your Node.js, Visual Studio Code. My interface is a bit different, so you will get a pretty simple interface. So what you have to do is that go to File. You need to create a folder, right? And once you create a folder, right, open the folder, and it will take you to wherever you want. Let's say JavaScript. Select the folder. It will take you to here, and it will see the JavaScript folder. Probably, excuse me, that my apologies that if your Visual Studio Code looks a bit different, because I've customized it in there to view all my projects on the right hand side, because I work a lot with C# and I use a lot of Visual Studio. So I like to keep my solutions on the right hand side. So I wanted to give similar look and feel interface. So, but by all means, if you wanted to change it, so you can go to View, Appearance, move sidebar to the left, it moves to the left. So I moved it to the right because I like it that way, so I'm gonna move it back, right? And the terminal, I moved it here as well. So what you can do, you go to terminal here, new terminal, it will bring the terminal underneath. So I drag and drop the terminal to the right because I prefer to do this way, right? Whatever I write, I wanted to have a bigger canvas to write, and then I can test on the right hand side. This is how I prefer. I mean, you are welcome to choose your own style, right? Everyone has a different way of coding, right? So one thing I wanted to emphasize here, if you're someone who came from Apex, right, since we're talking about Salesforce, Apex is a case insensitive language, right? So what I mean by that is that in Apex, X and X, this one, right, it means the same, right? It doesn't make any difference. But in JavaScript, it's not the case. It's a case-sensitive language. Let me show you one thing, right? So equals 10, and both are different languages. Both are different variables. It means different. X and X are not similar, right? So because it's a case-sensitive language. Okay, and so this is how you define a variable, where, or you current into, but you can also use let. So let x equal to, let's a equals to 20. That's according to the new latest standard, right? So what we're going to do, so we're going to stick to let here, right? So this to define a variable, right? And then I wanted to display this on the console, on the console, right? So the way to do that is console dot log equal to a. And another thing I wanted to mention that the JavaScript is not a static language. You can't find out error by compiling during the compile time, right? Like you can do with Apex, right? If you do a syntax error, or if you like with C#, if you do a syntax error, you try to compile it, it complains, right? In this case, you try to compile, you try to save it, JavaScript will not budge. It will not give you any information, right? That's what's the dynamic language. You'll find out in the runtime, right? So now so remember that I mentioned that you need to install the node, because JavaScript you can run on a browser. We're not using browsers today. We're gonna use the node. So the way to run it, so you open a terminal here, right, and you can do node file.js, right? It will run. Wow, it gave you 20, right? Now you can IntelliSense works very well, right? So for instance, if you write console, right, it auto completes the option here for you, right? Console, right? It gives you information about console, right? And you can do dot. It can give you all the methods associated with the log, right? So you can do this. And one thing about the console.log is that you can write any number of params here. Let's say let's be equals to 5, right? And then you can see so b, right? You can do that. You can do that as well, right? So console.log is something like windows.alert in a browser, something similar like that, right? Okay, or you can say document.getElement.inner HTML, displays that on the screen if you're using with HTML, right? So we're not talking about HTML and scripts between HTML. So okay, so now let's talk about a different data type, right? So this is integer. So now we have let b equals to so we have string. You can have hello world, right? And you can have let c equals to 10.86, right? This is decimal, right? And let d equals to true, right? So we have, and then we have arrays. Let's a1 equals to right? So these are the arrays we have. Arrays is like a collection, right, which stores list of integer or as well as list of strings, or even the list of unrelated of, right? Let's say we have a2, we have one i2. We can do this as well, right? Now we can do console.log type of we can do a, right, and console.log because if you wanted to find the type of each one, right, you can find it using a method called type of. So this will I'll explain to you what I'm doing. Type of C, console.log type of D, right, and let's do console.log type of type of A1, right? Okay, so let's save it and then let's run it. You can clear this one using CLS, then you can do node. Oh, sorry, because we have already defined that too. So this is why I told you, right? I mean, when I save this file, right, if it's a static language, it would have complained, right? Look, you can't declare A1 again, right? But it's a dynamic language, so right, this is one of the things you need to keep into consideration. But that being said, JavaScript is a very popular language in the world. So right, okay. So this is number, A number, right? B is it's a string. C is a number again, right? And D equals to Boolean, and A is an object, right? It's a collection. These are considered as an objects in JavaScript, right? Okay. Now I'll tell you one thing here. let's say I wanted to do let sum equals to a plus c, right? Let's see what happens. Console.log. You're going to do sum. We are adding a 20 to 10.6, right? Okay, you're going to do 30.6, right? Fantastic. Now, what do you think should happen when you do a plus b? Hello world, right? Okay, now change this to 6. Because let me put 6 in the form of a string, right? Now I'm doing a plus b. What should happen? Okay, 206. Pretty good, right? All right, now let me do a times b, right? Right, so there are two different expressions, like, so addition, subtraction. So plus means you add two numbers, minus means you subtract, star means you multiply, slash means you divide, right? So these are the for arithmetic operations, right? So I'm doing a times b right now. You might wonder, that's tricky, right? Because you are multiplying a number with a string. Doesn't make sense, right? That's where it gets interesting. Watch it. 120. I wonder, that's interesting, right? I'll tell you one more interesting thing. Now, I'm going to reverse it. B times A, right? Now, tell me what should happen, right? You might think, A times B should be B times A, right? Right, we'll see the difference. Oh, come on. This is sometimes I hate about intelligence. You miss the place, it types in the wrong place, okay? Now, node, what was that, file.js? Interesting, right? Okay. Now, the thing with this, when you take a string and a number, right? If you have a number in it, right, it takes it as a number and multiplies it, right? So this is one of the things you need to keep into consideration, right? So now if you do a plus b, it should be 206. Fantastic. Okay. Now we talked about now let's do one more thing. Let's see what happens when you add a boolean with a number. Let's see what happens. You might wonder, what does that happen, right? So Boolean expression, true and zero. True can be equate to 1. False can be equate to 0, right? So let's say, let me put this into false here, right? And now, right, remember, watch. 20, right? True. 21, because true, it considering true as 1 and false as 0. So, okay, now let's do the other way around, a plus d. Let's see what happens. Okay, 21, right? Pretty straightforward. Okay, now we have arrays here, right? Arrays are like collection, right? If you are someone who used Apex or C#, you know arrays are like collections, right? You have lists in Apex and similar to that. So now how to retrieve the values of A1, right? It's pretty straightforward. You can actually do A1, right? You can do A1 dot 0 because it started with the 0th position, right? So, and now we do, right? Okay, it becomes 1, right? Now, and what if I do, say, 0? It started with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So let's say I wanted to have the position of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So I will have 4. It should pop out, sorry, 4, right? Now I want to add an element to an array. How to do that? It's pretty straightforward. So you're gonna a1 dot push, right? I'm gonna push it. Let's say I'm gonna push 7, right? Okay, and then console.log, and I want to do a1. So arrays are very handy if you wanted to use the collections, right? You can, if you wanted to store in the collection, if you wanted to sort the stuff, let's say you wanted to add stuff into collections and you wanted to do different, 5 numbers and you want to sort that numbers, or you wanted to put the data into list, different things you can do with different way. Arrays are very handy. So if I do, okay, so when I do this, you see, it added a number element at the end. Okay, now let me take the element out, right? So there's something called pop, right? And you're gonna do console.log a1. Okay. All right. Okay. There you go. It popped out. So let me pop out again. I copy paste here, and let me do same here. Right. Okay. Voila. Fantastic. Right. It taken off one more. So pop will remove the elements from the array, and push will insert the element to an array. Pretty easy, right? Straight and easy. Okay. Now, this is about the data types and other stuff. Now, just by knowing the data type is not good enough. You need to know logical expression as well. If else, right? For loops, right? So we're going to talk about if else. So if else is like, think about a scenario, right? If you do this, then this will happen. Else, something else will happen, right? Let's say, very, very basic example. Let's will rain equals to true, right? If, right, now I wanted to check if it's rain, it will say, it will display rain. If not, it will display no rain, right? Just a simple example. So I can use this using if-else statement, right? So very easy to do. Use if, right? Now you see, look at the screen, right? Pay very close attention to this. You have if here, and there's something called if statement. If you want code completion, just type it, right? But this is not enough for us because we want else statement as well, right? So you take this off, remove it, delete it, type if again. See, else statement here? There you are. It completes the code for you. Very friendly, right? I mean, you won't get this option in OPA++, right? Unless you write a macros or something. But why bother, right? When Visual Studio Code will give you, amazing option, right? If you don't remember the syntax, don't worry, it'll have a code completion, right? Okay, now let's say if will rain, we're gonna do console.log, just say rain, right? And then else, right? Console.log, right? It's a logical expression, right? I mean, if something happens, if this equal to this, this will happen. If this equal to, if you win $100,000, you will go to Vegas. If you win $50,000, you will go to Iceland. Else, if you win, $10,000, you will go to, Queenstown in New Zealand if you're living in Queenstown. Else, if you win, you stay home. A simple scenario, right? Okay, so, right, so, okay, so now we're gonna do run it, right? It's rain because it's true. Now let me make it false here, right? And then, okay, I'm gonna do no rain. Fantastic, right? Nice. Now we have something called switch statement as well. So let's say let's fruit equals to apple, right? So I wanted to see if the fruit is equal to apple, or the fruit is equal to banana, or a fruit is equal to orange, or whatever, right? then print something, right? So we use the switch statement for that. You can use if statement, but the thing with this, I mean, switch statements are very nice and very, it makes your code a little bit neater, right? Compared to if else, if else, if else, if else, right? So you can do pretty much using switch statement. Okay, so if you're not sure about the switch syntax, right, as usual, type switch and then use this one. Voila, right? Okay, so you're gonna do fruit here and value here apple, right? And then you're gonna do console.log apple, right? And then you'd see, okay, I wanted to add something called case, because it's a string, right? So you have to, right? Okay, now we're gonna do orange, right? And then console.log. So we're gonna do orange, right? Oh, come on, orange. Oh yeah, right. If default, just put console.log. I'm just gonna put none, right? Okay, so we're gonna do CLS. Just gonna do apple, right? So I'm just gonna do orange, right? And I'm gonna do orange. You see, now you might wonder, why is getting none? That's because I didn't put break here, right? So you need to pay attention to break. Otherwise, what happens? You're telling, I want this one because you're not breaking, right? And I want this one as well, right? So now run it and see. So these are the things you need to pay special attention to. So similarly, you can use loops, right? So we have something called for loops, right? So let's say I have, let me use the array again. Let's a equals to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? These are the array. Right now I wanted to use the for loop to print all of this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? I can use different types of for loops, but I want to use this one for very basic for loop for now. For loop means I'm going to start from the 0th position and I'm going to go all the way to 6 and display 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the requirement is I want to print each element, right? That's the requirement. This is an array. So you got a requirement to print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Pretty straightforward. So you can use for loop, you can use for each. So I'm gonna start with the for loop, the first thing, right? So you're gonna do for, right? Just as usual, index. So this is fantastic, right? So everything it printed out for you. So all you have to do, array, right? So this is the array. So all you have to do, take the a here and replace it with the here and here, right? And then you're gonna do console.log. And you're gonna element, okay, and now save it, and voila, fantastic, right? You can do this because you're starting with 0th position and you're saying run till it is less than the length, right? That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So if it's 5, run till it's 5, then after that exit it, right? This is pretty straightforward. Now we're going to use the for each loop. For each, let's see if it works. This is fantastic. This is nice and easy syntax. This is called arrow syntax here as well. So what we're going to do, so we're going to do console.log. We're going to do element, right? And save it. If you want a simpler version of syntax, right? Now I'm gonna do, okay, all right. Okay, sorry, because array should be a, right? Because I forgot that. Right now, come on. Right, you see, it's printed. Nice and easy, right? So you can use for loops. You can also use while loop, right? If while loop you can use. So if you wanted to execute something, right? Let's say while loop, let I equals to 10. So Okay, let I equal to 10, right? So let's say I I'll explain in a minute what I'm trying to do. Okay, so you can use while loop. While loop is similar like for loop, but you see, it's if you wanted to go through a different database operation, you can use in certain programming language. You can do next move, next move. So this is so what I've did. I started I equals to 10. Then I said run as long as I is less than 20, and I incremented I. This symbol, right? Something like this. This can also be written as I equals to I plus 1, right? This I equals to I plus 1. You can also write like this. This is a simple way you can write, but if you want as a readable form, you can you're welcome to write I equal to I plus 1. There's nothing wrong in that, right? Or you can also write I equals to I minus 1. Just so something like that. I equals to I minus 1, right? You can also write I minus, right? So this is something you can write as well. I mean, I prefer to write this way. Some people prefer to write a different way. I minus equals to 1, right? Some people like this one. I mean, I prefer to write in a more readable way. That's up to you. I prefer my code to be more readable so that other developer can understand it rather than writing a fancy piece of code, right? Which makes it complicated. Because we're not here for a code, saving the code space. Okay, so that's one thing you can do. Then you have do while, means if you wanted to execute at least one, you can use the do while, right? So do while syntax you can do, right? So that's kind of stuff you can do. All right, now we're going to talk about objects here a bit, right? So objects are something, see, arrays are objects, but we have something else. So let's say where method equals to. So once we talk about an object, I'm going to talk about functions, right? So this is how the syntax of an object. So I have first name, we can say name 1, right? Last name equals to, right, name 2, right? So this is how an object. So you can see console.log, and you can do method, and it will display you. Come on. So you can do something like that, first name, last name, right? Now, you might wonder, how do I access first name, right? It's pretty straightforward. First name, right? You can access this first name. And you can access the first name, right? You can access similarly the last name. And you get the last name, right? Okay, now you can also dynamically add the variables to this object, right? To the fields to this object, right? So we have method dot phone, right, equals to right. Okay, now you can see console.log method, right? Take this off, and you see you've added the phone here. So it's added. You can add dynamically to that as well, and you can access it console.log. And we can use method dot see phone here automatically, and you can, there you are, it determines the phone. Okay, now this is how you can write a method. So method can involve this is how you write an object. So object can involve fields, and it can involve the function as well. So let me talk about a function first before we talk about adding function to your object, right? So it's pretty straightforward. So the way you define a function is very straightforward. So you can do where, so you can also define a variable using where as well. right? So, or you can use let method equals to function add x, y. This is how you define a function, right? If you do not know how to write a function, right, so you can do function statement like IntelliSense. It will take you, it will give you the skeleton of it, right? Pretty straightforward. These are the params. Like in Apex, right, or in other language, you mention if it's a number, right? If it's an integer or if it is a string, right? In this case, you don't mention anything. Because it works out in the runtime, right? So what we're gonna do return x plus y. Right, okay, now what we're going to do, the way to call is console.log method. Please make sure that it's a case sensitive, right? That's the advantage of having IntelliSense. It corrects your case automatically, right? Because I'm very guilty of, writing mixed cases, because initially I used to program in Delphi. Delphi is exactly like your Apex. You can mix and match case, no problem, right? And but in C#, it's entirely different story. You can't do that, right? So yeah, I had an initial problem when I moved to C# development. So, but yeah, that's all good. Okay. All right. So you can see it. You can use the method here. You can use this method here and pass the params, right? So this is, you can do it. Right, so this is how you define a method. So you can also have a method without a param. That's possible as well. You don't have to pass a param, right? Like I don't need a param, so I can say test, and I can say return hello world, right? You can do hello world. You can do that as well. So you can do console.log. Okay, and you can do method, right? Right, so, hey, hello world, fantastic. All right, so now what we're gonna do, we're gonna include this method in an object, right? And that's pretty much what we're gonna do today. Then the rest of the stuff we're gonna do next time, right? So let's create an object here where obj, right, equals to, let's create an object called first name. First name, right, you can put it as name1. You can put, okay, let's save it, right? Okay, and then you can do last name. Okay, and you're gonna put sorry, Muller. Sorry, this syntax, I'm just it's just when you're working in different programming language, you can just okay, where display, where just gonna do let display. You can do function, right? You can do show. I don't need this one. Okay, and then you're gonna do return this dot first name plus this dot last name, right? Okay. What is the problem here? Really? What's the problem? Oh, maybe. No? Yeah. Really, what the heck is the problem here? Hang on. Let's see if I can save this one first. Okay, I can save this one. Now, first name. Ah, okay, I understand what's the problem. Sorry, my apologies. Because I used function, because, yeah, that's right. Yeah, return this dot first name. Okay, this dot last name, right? All right. So what I'm doing is that I'm calling a function inside an object, right? And so this this object has two fields and a method, right? And this method is going to use the field of this object. So the way to refer to the inside field is by using this, right? So it's referring to this one, right? So what we're going to do, so we're going to do console.log, and I want to use the method of this one. I'm going to do object.display, right? And I'm going to do okay, and I'm going to run this one. Oh, come on. There you go. The name is display, right? Okay, now what happens if I don't put the brackets here, right? So it will not execute as a method, right? It will instead show the metadata kind of stuff. Right, now I'm gonna do one cunning stuff here, right? Let me add object dot right, let me add object dot phone, right? And equals to, right, now we're gonna do object dot display with phone equals to function show phone, right? Oh, come on, no, not this one. I'm dynamically assigning method to the object, right? So I'm gonna do return this dot right, and this dot first name plus phone number is, right, this dot phone, right? Right, now what we're gonna do, console.log. Let me say I wanted to display object.display with phone, right? So there you are. So what I've done, right, I've created an object here, right? So where I've added two fields, first name and last name, and then I've added a method, right? Method like function, which I've taught you just now how to create a function. This is the body of a function, right? And this I'm assigning to a variable. So now what happens is, now, and this works fine. Now I've decided that, oh, okay, so someone has given me this code, but that's not enough. I wanted to add more fields and methods to this object. I can do that, right? So I've added this object.phone, right? And then I created a new method here, right? And then I've used this field along with the new field, like this phone number with the field, and then I called it. Well, it works because, you know, this is how flexible the JavaScript is, right? It's very easy, it's very powerful, and you can do a lot of stuff with this, right? So I hope you find some value out of today's session. This is all I wanted to cover today. I don't want it to go more detail. So tomorrow we're going to talk about arrow functions, and we're going to talk about arrays inside an object and other stuff, right? So because I wanted to make this session shorter, I mean 3 max, then I think that's all you need to know if you wanted to work in JavaScript to start with. The rest I expect you to do by practice by yourself, right? So that's all I wanted to cover today. Thank you so much for attending. I hope you have an amazing day. Adios and greetings from New Zealand.